After that, Mozarako, with what seemed like very little effort, seemed to simply summon up some more clothing, even cooling down the room. As if simply breathing in, she seemed to draw all the heat from the surrounding metal surfaces, cooling them down immensely, and afterwards, with seemingly a snap of her fingers, created more clothing, restoring her previous golden attire and adornment, and even making Delius some new clothing, which she assured him would be far more durable than what he was wearing before. However, he was still quite cross with the fact that she had burnt away Asa's custom-tailored outfit, and that she had put a great deal of effort into. All of the other council members were, well, shocked, as Delius and the Solari god Mozarako winched open doors that had been welded shut by heat, with very little effort, to exit and tell everyone else that peace had been arranged. There would be no conquest of their system. Mozarako informed her followers that this system was already in the possession of rightful gods, and to treat all members of Delius's race as such, no different than they would treat a Solari, with the only exception being that they did not actually have jurisdiction or control over their fleet or ships. To which, with the offer of peaceful coexistence on the table, all of the planetary representatives breathed a deep sigh of relief, expecting the worst when they saw the doors within the spaceship beginning to glow a bright red and melt before their eyes. They had expected a conflict in which only one god would survive, with both the members of the planetary councils crossing their fingers and hoping for Delius, while the worshippers of the Solari were certain in the victory of their god, both being shocked when Delius and Mozarako exited together. Afterwards, a few brief discussions were had as to how events would transpire from this point, with a more personal discussion with the current elder representing Hagara about whether or not Mozarako would be welcome to visit their homeworld, and whether her people might be free to come there as well. The elder thought Delius was perhaps being a bit too accepting, and said that it would have to be discussed with the Elder Council of Hagara, which was built up of elders from all of the individual villages, stating that Mozarako themselves would be allowed to visit, and from her they would divine whether or not they wished to associate with them, her being the standard for how her people would be received, and warning her that the manner in which they entered the system did not paint a good picture. But after Mozarako apologized, claiming that she did not understand that they were in fact true gods such as her, and that it was simply her desire to protect and acquire Hagara from frightful and fear-ridden mortals, that the elder did lament a bit, saying that they would take it into account when making their end decision. Afterwards, Mozarako invited them on board a personal shuttle, with which they could travel to the surface of Hagara together. This was a special vehicle, crafted with the gods in mind, made to rigor the harsh re-enter process without destroying it, so they would not need to use the teleporters to descend, which Mozarako actually said that the races that they had brought under their wing as servants had already developed teleportation technology, but it was simply useless with people of her race. It simply couldn't handle transporting a Solarian. The teleporters would have none of it. So the Solari either needed to leave the world on their own, which was easy enough to do since they could fly, or use one of these shuttles that they had created through great time and effort on the part of their subservient races. So after boarding, it was a short enough trip down to the surface of Hagara, where they located Delius's home village. As they landed on the planet's surface, the ship itself opening up, just a stone's throw away from the village itself, Delius and the Elder exiting, Mozarko removed her traditional godly attire, setting aside the massive golden helmet and robes that draped from it, and creating, once again with seemingly little effort, what she said was traditional attire for her home world, which looked to be some sort of streaming form of energy that wrapped around her body, almost transparent, but not quite, and that seemed to drift about their form as she stepped off of the ship, releasing the tentative form that she was using before, that seemed solid and physical, and reverting back to this strange energy form that she claimed was her natural state. As she stepped off of the ship, her red hair still somewhat floating as she looked about, breathing deeply. For a few moments, the look on her face gave Delius the impression that she somewhat felt at home here, relaxed, as the feeling of a warm breeze flowed out from her, wafting the gentle energy-like clothing that she wore. "Well, aren't you just a sight?" the Elder said as she looked upon Mozarko taking those deep breaths, the illumination that she emitted growing a bit brighter. Yes, Madam Elder," Mozarko said as she turned and gave a slight bow towards the Elder of the village. "It is nice to be on a planet that, well, feels much more like home. If I were to take my true state in any normal world, everything around me would have turned to ashes and fire by now. Everything running and screaming in fear, pain, and agony. But here, nothing," she said as she looked out at the abundant nature around her. "Everything here just continues to be, lives and prospers," Mozarko said as she saw some small plant life growing nearby, bending down and stroking her hand across the top of some flowers that were quite common and native to Delius's home world. She looked down at them with a smile. "We have these at my home too. Our people actually use them to make sort of potpourri. We dry the leaves and keep them about our homes. They make everything smell quite nice," she said as she ran her fingers across the petals. And as she did, the petals themselves seemed to begin to alight, every touch making them glow just a bit. This too seemed to give Mozarko an even warmer, more comfortable smile. "Well, young miss, our village is this way, or rather Delius's is. Come," she said as she began to walk towards Delius's village. All three of them very shortly finding themselves walking towards the perimeter, the outer edges of the village. At first, several of the village guard taking note and beginning to approach with haste before seeing Delius and slowing down, both of them staring in amazement at this glowing figure that they seemed to bring with them. "Hey, Dante! Chirika!" he said to the two village warriors who were approaching. "It's nice to see you two again." "Delius? We didn't expect you to be back here," they announced as they grew calm. I mean, what's going on? Oh, it's nothing really. It's just that we have a guest. This is Mozariko. She's going to be staying with us for a short while. Apparently, Hagara isn't the only living planet. There are others. Mozariko here is from one of them. Another race, but apparently from the same place that we originate from. Way back. Both of them gave a curious glance as Mozariko approached, giving a slight bow. Hello. It's nice to meet you both. Yeah, likewise, they said, as Delius, Mozariko, and the Elder passed them by, entering the village to a now gathering assortment of villagers, curious about their new arrival.